It's not the end of the world, but the way people are acting make it seem like it is so. It's sort of like any vaccine would. Careful to work, day and night, in a lab. Funded by the government. Funded by people who pay taxes for some measure of security. Months of work and hundreds of vials. Half a dozen donated human brain tissue samples and comparative slides. Blood work and trials that led up to clinical trials that led up to something amazing. A vaccine. Create to fight and in time cure. Debilitating mental process of clinical depression. Not a cure for cancer, but a breakthrough. It worked. It, honest to God, 100% worked. Daily medication and weekly visits to a shrink were traded off for fun days off and nights on the town. All thanks to a bi-monthly vaccine cooked up in a little lab for a big government paycheck. Yes, after some time, it backfired. The clinical trials were fine. That's because the scientists and doctors behind them knew what they were looking for. They had only diagnosed people with some form of depression by professionals. They didn't just pluck someone off the street. They wanted actual, legit test subjects. There was too much money riding on the vaccine being effective for mistakes. Yeah, the vaccine worked, but the illness had to be present inside the human brain for the vaccine to work. Do you know how many people get misdiagnosed every day? Because too many psychiatrists see a patient instead of a paycheck, because some of them just throw a prescription at a frown, instead of just taking their time to do their jobs and listen. 6 months of injection, a bliss of a breakthrough moments all over the country. 6 months before the first incident hit the news. A mother picked up their 2 toddlers from daycare and greeted them with a hug. The mother, overjoyed, hugged them back and shortly caved in their little girl's ribs. She smiled and snuggled up to her small little girl. It didn't let go until the police came. A mother attempted to give a cop the same hug. She left behind a husband and a 5-year-old boy. It wasn't anything major. It was tragic, but nothing too terrifying. You could find things worse on Reddit, for God's sakes. It was a thing that happened, but it was an isolated incident. Until the next one. 4 months later, an elderly man hugged his wife to death. They were both in their 80s. Fragile things. While she died of cracked ribs and internal bleeding, he fractured an arm and a few ribs, but he never stopped smiling. It became a trend. Only adults were doing these hugs of death, but then a rare teenager hugged her BFF to death. We were looking for patterns where there weren't any there, hunting for links that weren't available to the public. But people figured it out eventually. None of these people had done these hugs of death had been diagnosed with any form of depression. They had all had the vaccine. Think about this. 7% of adults in the United States have depression. Roughly 12% of the population had gotten the vaccine. The only thing they needed to get the vaccine in some of the states was just a goddamn checklist of signs. So if you met the criteria, you got the needle. Fuck accuracy and the proper medical procedure. They'd gotten the miracle drug. It's... dubbed the Hug Me virus by the media. It's not a virus. It's a chemical imbalance in the brain. Like depression, doctors wanted a cure. But what's done is done. Became a maniac. Not just a medical kind of maniac, or a drug-induced maniac. Full of stereotypical cackling mania. They seem normal until they make eye contact. They didn't, at first, seem dangerous. Would you turn down a big, smiling hug from your father, your wife, your grandmother? All forms of public display of affection were prohibited. It's a case of national security. Few protested, and those who did learned fast that a hug in public got you tasered and quarantined. To get the point across, the media did a special on the survivors. Not everyone who hugged died, but surviving was a nightmare. Cracked ribs and paralyzation in teenagers, spinal fractures in grown men. They interviewed a 7-year-old girl who would scream and cry if anyone touched her. Her daddy hugged her so hard her lung collapsed. People infected by the Hug Me virus were located, carted off in quarantine, and tested and terminated. No doubt. That's how it's going to be. Blood and brain tissues from people who didn't know that their hugs could snap ribs and kill. The vaccine was off the market. It has been off the market for months now, I hear. And scientists, the same ones that made a vaccine, are still looking for a cure. Back to the drawing board. But I don't think we need to worry too much. It's not so bad. Yeah, it's bad. But it's not the end of the world. People will die. They do that every day. I'm not being heartless. I'm being realistic. How do we know the cure won't backfire again? We don't, but people will want to try. I know it's dangerous out there, but talking about this remembers how long I've been cooped up. Studio apartments are tiny, and I'm running out of food. Still, despite the bullshit going on the outside, I'm feeling okay. Better than okay. I could be doing better. Oh, maybe. Maybe I just need a hug.